This is the Super Sabre Society Video of the Month, starring Russ Violet and Lou Doherty. Well, that's an old F-100, and we got two old guys that flew it right here. We got Russ Violet, and we got Lou Doherty. And let me start off with Russ. Russ, where did you grow up, and how the heck did you get into flying?
I grew up in northern Montana. I went to high school there and graduated and went to Denver to college and got my ROTC commission at that point. But what did I do how did I get into aviation? I was pitching hay to cows 30 below zero in Montana with 40-knot winds blowing, watching fighters fly in the contrails above me, and I figured that has to be a great life. So when I got out of college, I wanted to go to fighters. I wanted to go to aviation, so that's what I did.
How about you, Lou? How'd you get into it?
I was born and raised on a farm in upstate New York, and we did all the field work with horses until I was in high school. But I recall one day I was plowing with Dick and Ned, a blustery November day, and a DC-3 flew overhead. And I thought to myself, boy, what a wonderful way that would be to make a living.
So how about, then how'd you get in the Air Force, college, and where'd you go to pilot training?
Well, when I went to college, the draft was on, and in order to get a college deferment, you had to be in ROTC. So I lined up in the Air Force line and signed up to be an Air Force ROTC student at college to get a hold of that deferment so I could go to college.
Was that University of Montana?
University of Denver, Denver, Colorado.
Oh, Denver indeed.
1954.
So how did that translate into the Air Force then when you graduated?
So I got my commission through ROTC in summer of '58, and I was selected for pilot training. Went into pilot training that fall. Got my wings in January of 1960, and from there I was lucky enough to win an F-100 assignment through Luke and Nellis, and ended up assigned to Misawa Air Base in Japan.
What kind of, where would you go to pilot training?
I went to Moore Air Base in Texas.
Which is no longer.
Which is no longer. It used to be called Tragic Valley, but it was a wonderful place to live. We moved from there up to Webb Air Force Base, where I went through the T-33 program, getting my wings.
Very good. And Lou, how about your pilot training venture?
I went to Marana, to primary, and I was delayed in going to pilot training. When I was 21 years old, I got my arm in a hay baler and couldn't pass the flying physical initially. So I graduated ROTC from Cornell and got a commission as a second lieutenant. And I went to work as a maintenance officer, and I was due to get out in 2 years. But before I separated, I decided to take another flying physical, and I actually put my t-shirt over my arm when they gave us the initial spread your wings type thing, and amazingly, I passed the physical. They never did look at the arm, so I passed the flying physical, and of course, I had umpteen physicals while I was going through pilot training. But as I started to say, I went to Marana for primary and Laredo, Texas for basic. And unfortunately, they decided that any returning Korean veterans were teaching students bad habits. And they kept several of us out of my class as instructors at Laredo, alleging that we had no bad habits. So I spent another 4 years in Laredo as an instructor pilot in the T-33.
Well, this is going on the internet, so the statute of limitations hasn't expired, so you may end up having to pay back all of your military salary because of your arm. So Russ, okay, you got through pilot training, you went to F-86s, you went to Misawa, then what?
Well, I didn't go to 86, I went straight to 100s, went to Misawa.
Ah, that's right.
I flew the F-100 there for 3 years, accumulating 800 and some odd hours. In the process of going through training in the F-100, I ejected on takeoff at Nellis, 18th of November 1960, at 1:43 in the afternoon. I remember it well. It was a very low altitude, and Hoot Gibson was on the ramp and watched me come out and was sure that my chute was not going to open, he told me many years later, but it did, and here I am.
Yeah, good. Now, and when you're in Japan, did you sit nuke alert in Japan?
You could not sit nuke alert in Japan. What we did was deployed from Misawa and Itazuki to Kunsan and Osan, where we sat nuclear alert on those two pads. We had two F-100 squadrons at Misawa that had 40 aircraft assigned to each. Each squadron had 12 lines of nuke alert in either Osan or Korea, so we had 14 to 15 folks all the time in one of those locations sitting nuclear alert for a week at a time.
So after you served your sentence as an instructor, how'd you get an F-100, Lou?
I was a maintenance officer originally for the 2 years before I went to pilot training. And while I was instructing at Laredo, the rule was changed so that the requirement to complete pilot training was a commitment for 5 years. And almost overnight we had more instructor pilots at Laredo than we had students. And so I was put back into my original job as a maintenance officer. And I went to was overseas to Wethersfield, England. 20th Tactical Fighter Wing had F-100s, and I went there as a maintenance officer. And the luckiest thing in the world, my squadron commander, Red Stewart, wanted all his pilots to be bomb commanders, including his maintenance officer. And I got a local checkout. Bill Gillette, the wild man, gave me, was my instructor, and so I got an in-theater checkout in the F-100 at Wethersfield, England. And soon after I got checked out in the 100, I went with the squadron to Wheelus. We had gunnery at El Watia Range, and that's where I dropped my first bomb and fired the first gun in the F-100 at El Watia Range in Libya.
So we got a maintenance officer with a nuclear bomb. That's good. That's good stuff. So Russ, okay, next comes war. How'd you get to war?
I went from Misawa to McConnell and transitioned into the F-105 in 1964. In the spring of 1965, as all of us know, after the Gulf of Tonkin incident, we deployed as a squadron from McConnell to Takli in early March of that year. And the day after we got there, I found myself in a four-ship going over to Route Pack 1, as it's known now, and bombing Vin. That's how I started the war.
And did you end up with 100 missions?
I flew 126 missions in Barrow and Rolling Thunder. 70 of those were in North Vietnam, the rest were in Laos.
Ah, very good. And Lou, you took a little different tack getting to war.
Yes, I was an F-100 maintenance officer in Wethersfield, England, and when I rotated back to the States, I went to Tactical Air Command as a F-100 system maintenance officer. And I wasn't too enthused with that. And the war in South Vietnam was just starting, and the word was out, if you volunteer to fly the Sky Raider, you can get your choice of assignments when you come home. So I immediately put my hand up, went to water survival in Panama, jungle survival in Panama, water survival in Homestead, Florida, escape and evasion at Stead, and checked out the Sky Raider and went to Vietnam. So
did you guys, when you're in Vietnam, were you an Air Force unit, or were you instructing Vietnamese as advisors?
Yes, the A-1 Sky Raider squadron was at Bien Hoa. There were two squadrons actually, and initially when I arrived in June 1965, our primary mission was training Vietnamese pilots. They had Sky Raiders and they were pilots, but we were teaching them gunnery. We had a pylon down at Vung Tau. We take them down for bombing. And I was there about 2 weeks when I took 6 airplanes to Udon, Thailand, and I still chuckle. They required me to go down around the Parrot's Beak and up over Bangkok to Udon, and we initiated the Sandy mission that time. And by the time I got back to Bien Hoa, the Vietnamese pilot training had been sent back to Hurlburt in the States, and all of our missions were fragged close air support or for defense.
And Russ, you finished up your 105 tour, but you spent a lot more time in the 105. Then you end up in Saudi Arabia at the end of your career. How did that happen?
Well, it's a long story, but let me say that first, completing the 105 in Tocli, I was assigned to F4s at Torrejon, Spain. At Torrejon, I spent a year there, was selected to go to the IG team in Wiesbaden. Went to Wiesbaden, spent 2 years inspecting units in Europe. Came back to Armed Forces Staff College, went to the Pentagon, went to Air War College, found myself back in Davis-Monthan at 355th as a chief of maintenance. Went from there to wing commander in the 479th at Holloman, lead in-fighter training program. From there, after making brigadier general, I was selected to be the ADO under Larry Welch at TAC. After that, I was at TAC IG for 2 years. Went from that to commander of 1st Air Force / ADTAC for 2 years, an 83 to 85 time period. And at that point, was selected to become the chief of the U.S. military training mission to Saudi Arabia, where I went in summer of 1985. Spent 2 years there and retired in 1987.
And
Lou, you had an interesting career after your Air Force career.
Yeah, but I've got to add on my F-100 experience. I had never fired a gun until I checked out in the F-100 and went to the El Wantilla range. And at that time, the wing had a dive bomb nuclear delivery and roll in at 35,000 feet. And on my first practice in this new nuclear delivery, I forgot to come out of afterburner. And I was supersonic when I went by the tower.
And then you use your supersonic talents later in crop dusting and also the commuter airlines.
I got out of the Air Force after 20 years in 1972, and I still was very interested in flying, and I did commence crop dusting in the Eloy area. I worked for Ed Thomason, and he had initiated crop dusting at night. Allegedly, the spray would envelop the cotton plants and would get better distribution. He'd have the flaggers with flashlights, and of course we knew the fields and we avoided wires and trees, but we started spraying cotton about 2 o'clock in the morning and would be finished by 9 o'clock in the morning.
Well, and I know, Russ, you've been a great grandfather after you've retired here and involved with the Pima Air and Space Museum. You've done a lot of great things. But both of you guys, as you look at the new military and the new kids and the old military and us old kids, what kind of message do you have for the new kids today?
You can do anything you want to do. You can be anything you want to be. But it takes hard work, motivation, dedication, and don't give up on it. Stay with it. Good things will happen.
How about you, Lou?
I couldn't add anything to what Russ has already said. Keep your nose to the grindstone and pursue your dreams.
Yeah, I think one of the things that the kids don't realize today is they've got everything today that we wish we had. They got chaff and flare and ECM that works and tactics and great airplanes and what have you. So even though it's a tough world out there, even though it's a tough world out there, it's we've got a great Air Force, and they are capable of things that we were never capable of and only dreamed of. Thank both of you guys. Great session and great careers. Thanks very much for your careers in the F-100 and what you've done for America.
Thank you.